You're trying everything and still not feeling better. In this episode, we're talking about gut health in chronic illness, why symptoms don't always add up, and what might actually be missing. You're listening to The Spoonful Show, honest conversations about chronic illness, identity, and finding meaning, even when life changes everything. I'm Rachel, a chronic illness spoonie, and I'm really glad you're here. Let's get started. Welcome back to this week's episode of The Spoonful Show, a podcast for people navigating chronic illness, looking for answers, and trying to feel less alone in the process. I hope you're doing well today, and I'm so glad that you're here with me. I have a question for you, though. Have you ever felt like your symptoms don't make sense or like they're all over the place and nobody can connect the dots? This might be if you're undiagnosed or even when you're diagnosed and having maybe symptoms that may or may not be related to your diagnosis. That's where I'm dealing with right now. So I have multiple sclerosis and I have type 1 diabetes, but I also have a lot of muscle issues. I know I've talked about it before. My whole digestive tract is slow. And I have some muscle weakness in my lung muscles and some different things. And I recently had some metabolic blood work come back abnormal. And my doctor is like, well, it's not that big of a deal. And the more I research, and I know you all probably do the same as I do, and research your lab work when it doesn't come back normal and your doctor's saying it's fine. And I have been investigating this. I recently went to my family doctor, who is such a help. And we're trying to figure out if all of this weakness and digestive issues are a part of MS or if I have something else going on and the doctor is just not connecting the dots. And so I know how frustrating that can be. And feeling like you feel like something else is going on. It's not just your normal symptoms or your normal illness, but feeling like, okay, something else is going on. And all they're doing for me is just throwing vitamins out. And I've lost like 25 pounds in the last 6 months. And it's just so heartbreaking to feel like something is off, but you can't seem to get everything connected and figured out what's going on with you. So if you're in that space like I am, I feel for you. I really do. I know how frustrating it can be. Today's episode is one I think you all will relate to because we're talking about gut health, but specifically through the lens of chronic illness. I deal with a lot of gut issues and bowel issues. And so this was something I felt like I need more information on. And I know that sometimes talking about constipation or diarrhea or things like that can be hard to discuss. But yet gut issues come up all the time in the community. There's a lot of confusion, some overwhelm, and honestly frustration around it, especially when it feels like you're trying everything and you still aren't feeling better. So today we're going to dive into that. We're going to talk about why gut issues are common in chronic illness, how the gut and immune system are connected, and even some symptoms that you might not realize are gut related. So I'm joined by Liz Roman, a board-certified functional nutritional practitioner who specializes in gut health and immune condition, and she brings both professional knowledge and personal experience into the conversation. So let's get started. Today's guest is Liz Roman, a board-certified functional nutritional practitioner and master restorative wellness practitioner who specializes in gut health, hormone balance, and holistic healing. After years of being told her labs were quote-unquote normal, while dealing with symptoms like brain fog, fatigue, and chronic constipation, Liz discovered the root causes behind her own health struggles, Hashimoto's, gut dysbiosis, and fungal overgrowth. Now she helps other women uncover the missing pieces of their health She's also the co host of the Top 100 Alternative Health podcast, The Health Revival Show. Welcome, Liz, to the podcast. I'm really excited to see you today and to talk about gut health.
Yeah, I'm excited.
I, for one, have experience with gut issues, and a lot of people with chronic illness do as well. And so I'm excited to talk a little bit about some of the things you've discovered and ways that our community can feel better with their gut health. I would first, though, like to ask you to introduce yourself to our listeners.
Sure. So I'm Liz Roman and I co-own Fit Mom Functional Health. So we are a functional medicine practice that works with women and children around the world. We do have some male clients too, but primarily our clientele are women. And I have an amazing team. We take on some of the most complex cases, not only because of our experience, clinically, but personally as well. So my story began when I was 11. I woke up one day and I fell out of bed, couldn't walk. My mom thought I was trying to just skip school, but in fact, it was children's rheumatoid arthritis. And so I was put on some heavy steroids, prednisone and methotrexate, and gained a lot of weight. Thankfully, I was able to get off of those, but fast forward to my early 20s, I was really struggling, and I had been for about 8 years at that point in time with chronic constipation, brain fog, skin issues, fatigue. I could not lose weight no matter what I was doing. Or if I did the extremes, it would come right back when I would try to eat, normal in terms of just even 2,000 calories, instead of 1,000 calories. So my empathy and sympathy to women is very strong because I've been through it, right? Going to doctors saying, I'm not feeling well, something is wrong. Are there any answers? And they're just saying, let's keep an eye on things. See you in 6 months. Or my colonoscopy at 20, nothing is wrong. You're chronically constipated because you don't drink enough water, eat enough fiber. So just do that and take some Marilax. And the reality is conventional medicine works within their tools, right? They are given a toolbox. They are given education that is quite different from functional medicine. And I hope and pray someday we have a world that blends these two together, because in functional medicine, we can utilize so many things in nature, starting with our lifestyle, our diet, our nutrition, that can really help us. But I do believe there is a time and a place for using, supplements, peptides, pharmaceuticals, even to help these individuals who have really struggled. Because from a genetic perspective, some, are struggling more than others with all of the things that have been man-made and created and are putting, a big burden on our body. And so through, my healing journey and reversing my Hashimoto's, putting those things into remission, taking, all of the protocols that I had to do myself, and then combine that with education, all of the courses and certifications I've done. This really allows us to help women, understand their body in a way that no one has ever maybe shared with them before, because their doctors so just work in silos, that we're able to help the woman understand, oh, okay, my constipation is a downstream problem of an upstream issue with my thyroid, right? My brain, my gut brain connection, my thyroid signaling, and all of these things that I was struggling with. Yeah, they had to do with my thyroid, but they also had to do with the gut and also my liver, right? If we're not detoxifying every day, the liver starts to get overburdened. And, it's all one system that is interconnected, and we have to treat it that way. And so that's why I do what I do and help women around the world.
In the chronic illness community, gut problems seem to be very common. So, from your perspective, why do so many people with chronic conditions struggle with digestive or gut issues?
Yeah. So, when you think about your gut microbiome, I mean, it is honestly, your microbiome is nose to tail, right? We have our sinus microbiome, we have our oral microbiome, then we have our digestive system, and it is home to trillions of bacteria. We're essentially walking bacteria. And when we think about assassins, if you will, to the gut, things that can throw off this beautiful symphony that should be working in harmony together to signal, everything is a signal system in the body. It can be, I liken it to a symphony, right? If you have a beautiful orchestra and then you got the piano player in the back just pounding on the piano, it's not going to sound too good. Things are going to be off, and everybody starts looking around and wondering, am I off? Oh, And so when you're thinking about everything that we ingest in the United States, we have a lot of big food, right, that feeds us. And in certain ways, this was necessary to support the population. But in other ways, we have a lot of frankenfoods, right? And so a lot of this is ultra processed. We have things that are enriching and fortifying our foods. These are artificial fibers, artificial sweeteners. We have folic acid instead of folate. And all of these things, depending upon, again, the person's state and their genetics, and again, their mother's microbiome, because we pass that on to our children, we can struggle more than others. And so a lot of this is really thinking about what is going on internally in the entire terrain, and then what environmentally can I be doing to support this. And when you combine, maybe poor genetics, poor detoxification from the get-go, maybe I had a dose of antibiotics. My first son, I had him by C-section emergency. He had multiple ear infections, which required multiple antibiotics. Yes, they were necessary. But at the same time, if I didn't know what I know in terms of how to help him recover from that antibiotic aftermath, this is where he would continue to stay in a state of compromise, because now he's lost a lot of his good microbes that are your gut army. And so I really think that it starts at birth and thinking about, how we're set up, but it also as we get older and we enter into the teenage years and then adult life, we have all of these other stressors, right? No one lacks stress in the world that we live in today in 2026. And we know that stress is one of the greatest contributors for creating leaky gut. So if we have a leaky gut, now we're going to see this start to go systemic in the body. Gut on fire, brain on fire. Here's my brain fog. I can't think clearly. I'm just exhausted. I can't remember things. I can't think of words. I don't remember I walked into a room. All of that can be impaired. We also think about our mood, our neurotransmitters. Serotonin is created in the gut. Now I'm thinking I have anxiety or depression. Again, maybe I'm lacking nutrients that I need to support my neurotransmitters. And, we go in with different medications. Some of those medications can be stimulating our dopamine, stimulating norepinephrine, both of which stimulate cortisol. And this raises blood sugar. And now my blood sugar is chronically elevated and I'm metabolically dysfunctional. I'm inflamed. I have skin issues. That shit will come out your skin, as I say, for individuals. So it really becomes this systemic burden when we have bacteria that should not be in the bloodstream, right? All these unwanted pathogens or things that your gut is designed to keep in the tube or in the lumen and then out, in terms of waste and everything. And sadly, conventional medicine, it's getting better, right? When we think of intestinal permeability or this leaky gut, right? They are starting to recognize that this is an ecosystem that is impacting everything in the body. But on top of all that, you have to think of your immune system. So you have 80% about of your immune system that resides in the gut. And so if you've got a lot of dysfunction here, your immune system is getting confused. It's making mistakes. It's starting to, as we make copies of things, run out of ink. And so some pages have the full copy, some page has partial, and some are just, don't know what they're supposed to be doing. And so we have the state now of molecular mimicry or immune dysfunction, maybe overactive immune. We start attacking our own body, right? Our own cells. Mm-hmm. So this is where we're going to see autoimmune. So it really can just be a big cascade that is set off because of the dysfunction that resides in the gut. We don't have enough of the good bacteria that are serving as our defenses, your gut army. And rather we end up in a place where we have too much of, I call them weeds in the garden, right? Or these invaders that are kind of taking over and banging on the piano in the back of the symphony.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you brought up a point of some unrelated issues that you wouldn't think would be gut issues, as far as like skin issues and the brain fog and fatigue and all of that. So basically, somebody who may not have constipation or belly issues, are you saying that those skin issues and other things could actually still be related to the gut.
1000%.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there was actually a research study that was done that showed the number one cause of anxiety is leaky gut. And again, in conventional medicine, right, we just, or they, I should say, treat it with, medications rather than addressing the root cause. Even for individuals that are going in with symptoms and they're given this diagnosis of IBS. I always say this is kind of a BS diagnosis. It's a syndrome, right? There's not really testing. They could do tests, but typically they don't. They go, off symptoms. If the colonoscopy didn't come back with anything major, or endoscopy, they're not really doing any further investigation. But when we think about this, they're generally prescribing anti-anxiety, medications, right? And there is something to be said that if you have, something coming up that's, really exciting, or you're nervous, you're going to go for an interview, you're going to give a presentation, a talk, you get your adrenaline going. And for some people that can really stimulate their bowels and then they're like urgent going to the bathroom, or others it can do the opposite and it can lock them up. They become in this fight or flight state and just kind of lock down. So when we think about leaky gut in general, you do not have to have symptoms GI, wise in terms of upper GI, thinking heartburn, GERD reflux, belching or repeated burping, abdominal pain, stomach cramping, gas, bloating, diarrhea, or constipation. You don't have to have any of those to have leaky gut. And again, leaky gut is something that we're going to think about in the way that, okay, my ecosystem is very delicate. My gut lining is one layer thick. Okay. And so if I have things that are coming in that are not supporting the tight junctions in the gut to stay in this, think of it as like a cheesecloth, right? The cheesecloth allows some things through, and that's what we want. We want certain things like nutrients, things that build us up, amino acids, antioxidants to get through the gut barrier. And at the same time, we want to maintain barrier integrity and don't have holes in our cheesecloth so that bacteria and viruses and other pathogens, particles of food are getting out into the bloodstream. So it's very delicate and it can be thrown off very easily by, I already mentioned antibiotics, but you think of NSAIDs, like too much Tylenol or acetaminophen, Motrin, those types of things. You want to think about other prescriptions that we might be using, birth control, right? Anything that's very nutrient depleting. We could think about proton pump inhibitors or acid reducers, because that's kind of a common thing people take if they have that sensation of heartburn, GERD, or reflux. And so there's a lot of things that can basically be an external assassin to the gut microbiome. But then there's also the internal environment and the terrain that we kind of say, if you have these microbes that are overgrown and they're driving inflammation, right? They're kind of creating a bit of chaos in the body. Not only does it create more of an issue within the gut and allow you to start fermenting, off of different foods, you're not breaking them down as well. There's some of your GI symptoms that could be happening, or not. But it's also creating an environment where when we go and look at inflammation and inflammatory metabolic markers, the liver isn't signaling as well as it should in terms of insulin. Pancreas is starting to become inflamed and not give you pancreatic enzymes to actually break down and absorb your food. Then we become nutrient depleted and we start to see other things like fatigue, and just very low energy, even though maybe you're sleeping well. And then as things build up, if they're not getting out, because maybe that person's not having, great bowel movements 1 to 3 times a day, it's going to come out somewhere else. And so it can start to attack on the skin and show up there as acne, rosacea, psoriasis, dandruff, dry scalp, flaky scalp, right? It's very dry skin because the skin is a barrier. The skin has its own pH, its own microbiome, essentially. It's just on the outside, right? And the skin's job is to protect us from all of the outside things, right? Coming in and getting in and infecting us that way. So both of these, your internal barrier and your external barrier, have to maintain integrity and in order for things to, function as they should and for you to live as symptom-free, as possible.
Mm-hmm. And for those of us that are stuck in this cycle of whether it be chronic constipation or bloating and brain fog and all of this, what are some of the best ways to start to kind of get out of that cycle?
Yeah. So, one, I'm a big believer of testing and addressing very specifically, but I also believe that symptoms, really are going to matter more than labs because we're not going to chase numbers, right? We're going to think about the person sitting in front of us and what their quality of life is. I'm a big advocate for that because you could have great labs and feel really, really crummy, vice versa. You could feel really crummy and your labs are not telling us too much. And so it's one of the things that we have to take both into account. From a constipation and bloating perspective that you mentioned here, if you think of a funnel, like if you were going to fill up your olive oil container that sits on your calendar, you have this little like cylinder that funnels that in, right? You have to open that up first. That's the bottom of the drain. Otherwise, it's going to back up and then essentially overflow. So, in my constipation cure guide, which is a free download anyone can get, I talk about food that can be very helpful. Even things like 2 kiwis a day is in the research to help support in terms of osmotic laxative action. You can work your fiber up. It's very important, though, that you go low and slow. You could make constipation worse if you're eating a standard American diet of 8 to 10 grams of fiber a day, and you're hearing me say 35 plus grams of fiber a day. Don't just go out to the store and buy a bunch of fibrous foods and chia seeds and flaxseed because you might make things worse. So low and slow and diversifying that, not eating the same things all the time. Different types of fiber ferment at different areas in the gut. And I do have a fiber guide that's coming out as well that talks a lot about this and the different types and food sources, as well as different supplemental sources that some people could utilize. One of my favorites, just because it's so gentle and it's so easy on the gut, is partially hydrolyzed guar gum. And so this is a prebiotic soluble fiber. It's a low FODMAP for people who have chronic digestive issues, maybe SIBO, or SIFO, fungal overgrowth, things like that. You want to give something is gentle. So I like that. And you want to have that, ideally just by itself, not a bunch of fillers and additives and colors and all the things that they throw in for fun, I guess you could say. So thinking about that is also helpful. But if you're really compromised, you're probably in a state that you need to go beyond that. And you need to be doing daily supports in terms of maybe a supplemental support, whether this is a motility agent because things just aren't moving through and you need to stimulate that. It could be, again, a more osmotic stimulant laxative type support, which I have a lot in my guide that I talk about. One that I love is called Constipend. Actually, it's not in any of the practitioner portals. It's on Amazon. It's not my favorite place to get supplements, but it's the only place I found it. And it's got some aloe in there. It's got some olive leaf extract, and then a couple different types of magnesium. So I find it to be more gentle versus clubbing somebody over the head like Miralax. When I took that, gosh, it was so harsh. Sometimes it would result in abdominal cramping and pain and then like running to the bathroom, hoping you were going to make it in time. And that's not a way, to live. So reference that. I have a bloating guide as well called Unbloated, where I talk about a variety of different things that can cause bloating in the gut microbiome, because it can be other things beyond just these microbes. It could be that we have estrogen dominance. And so in your estrobolome, which is different bacteria and enzymatic action that happens with estrogen in the microbiome, can be reactivating that, and that can be driving some of this bloating. So there's a lot of things, and that's really where, drilling down into what is it? Is it a combination of things? To heal is required. But before you can even go in with anything, as far as like if it is an infection, eradication agent or killer, you want to open up those drainage and detox pathways. And that would start by trying to get your bowels moving every day. And again, I could rant on this all day long, but your pooping hygiene, right? Like sitting on the toilet, getting your knees above your hips, that's helpful. Starting your morning with a little abdominal massage, I love you massage, some warm liquid tea, lemon water, stuff like that can be really helpful to stimulate the gastrocolic reflux. And, then just kind of play with your nutrition and work from there. And if things are not improving, then yeah, you got to get to the the other layers of the onion that we need to peel back to figure out what is driving this, chronically.
Are you looking for merch that speaks to your truth and makes you laugh? Spoonful of Strength has you covered. Literally. From t-shirts and hoodies to mugs and magnets, every design is made for the chronic illness community with heart, humor, and a whole lot of strength. Funny? Check. Inspirational? You bet. Illness specific? Absolutely. And the best part? I can personalize any design or create a custom shirt for you for no extra charge. So whether you're laughing through the pain or wearing your diagnosis with pride, our designs are funny, fierce, and illness specific, because being chronically ill doesn't mean being chronically boring. So if you want a sweatshirt that gets you, head to spoonfulofstrength.etsy.com. Now that's spoonful with 2 L's. Use code podcast for 20% off your entire cart. Is it safe to say that you should introduce things like one at a time, or eliminate something one at a time, to be able to help kind of figure out what is helping and what is hurting you?
Yeah, I think it's always wise, because if you do a complete overhaul, you don't exactly know what, is helping and what's not helping. And also anything that you're doing with changing your diet in terms of fiber or fermented foods, you want to go low and slow. Introduce that to the microbiome, because it is going to make a shift. There's natural pre and probiotics, right? And action that happens in the gut enzymatically. And so let your gut have a little bit of time to adjust, a day or two. You might feel a little bit more bloated. You might, in fact, have some gas. That's not necessarily a bad thing, as you are bringing in good bacteria to take resident and kind of crowd out this, or bad bacteria, if you will. So just know that some of those reactions can be normal. They should not be major, and they should not be ongoing or making things worse ongoing. If it is, obviously that's not the right tool for you. Back out and go with a bit of a different approach.
And you mentioned the massage. That's something that I do quite a bit. Can you explain to our listeners what the I Love You massage is?
Yes. So if you go from your right hip up to about just under your right breast, this is your ascending colon. And then you want to go across your abdomen and then down that left side from under the left breast, almost into like your pelvic region, right? So you're following your large colon here and just giving some gentle stimulatory manual, manipulation and movement there. I always like to say, I call it the I Love You 2 massage, because you should take then a couple of fingers and go around the belly button. That's in more of the small intestinal area, right? To stimulate that as well. So that could be a great way to start your day. Is it the end all be all for everyone? No, it's not. But these are foundational things that we can start with, and then, go deeper in the layers from there. Right. So I've made sure I've got my adequate water and hydration, electrolytes, potassium for poo. I always like to tell people this. It's sodium. We always talk about sodium, which is so crucial for the body, but potassium. Some of my chronically constipated gals need to go to a higher potassium ratio. So maybe a 2-to-1 potassium to sodium ratio. Maybe they're doing a 3-to-1, right? So you could even do things like cream of tartar. There's a little potassium in there. Add that to your warm lemon water with a pinch of sea salt. Coconut water is a great source of potassium. Maybe you need a potassium powder, like a Keto 1000, just straight potassium. Potassium chloride's the favorite in terms of a supplemental form. So you can even look, for something like that to add in if you're doing an electrolyte that doesn't have as much potassium as you want.
You've given us so many good takeaways. If you had to start with 3 things that, if somebody is overly constipated and in that rut, just 3 things to start with, what do you think the most important things to begin with are?
Number 1, we've got to manage our stress. People don't like hearing this, but your digestive system is a rest and digest state. And if we want to have proper signaling, proper chemical production in terms of stomach acid, digestive enzymes, bile acids, this is crucial. So I'm actually starting, I'm not sure when this is going to air, but next week, I'm just doing a 2-week challenge. And I'm doing it as a little bit of a case study to have people track if they sit down with their meals 20 minutes is the commitment. Every meal, main meal, right, that they eat, undistracted. I don't want your phone there. I don't want the TV on. I don't want you at your desk, at your computer, working on emails. I just want you to give yourself permission to set aside this time to nourish your body. Look at your food, taste your food, chew your food, savor it. If you've got some extra time left over, and it's really hard, by the way, I'm going to say I'm doing this for myself too, because it is hard. If you have time left over, I want you to go for a walk. Walking can help motility. It can help blood sugar. It can help digestion and bloating. So that would be number one, is stress and eating hygiene combined. Because if you're in a stress state and you're eating on the go in your car, right, while you're making lunches and things like that, you're not even making the connection that you've eaten this. And this is where we see a lot of people overeat too. But the main thing there is to get into a rest and digest state. The second thing I'm going to say is that hydration with minerals. And so I'm going to go back to what I mentioned about potassium. For people who are chronically constipated, start with a 1-to-1 ratio, sodium to potassium. And I want you to get at least 3 liters of water in a day that's filtered. Most of your liquids, drinks that you have should have electrolytes in them, because our water is dead. So that would be the second thing. And it's more so on the potassium side. And the third thing I would say is really to think about what you are nourishing your body with. Do you have diversity in your diet, or are you just eating the same 8 to 12 foods every week? You're shopping the same thing because that's just what you like. So I would really encourage diversifying one new food in each category. And so what do I mean by that? One new fat could be that you just use flax seeds instead of chia seeds this week, or pumpkin seeds, hemp hearts, stuff like that. One new fat, try to get in a different protein. Don't eat just eggs all the time. Don't eat just chicken all the time. Rotate in other things that maybe you have just forgotten about or you don't typically do. Scallops, shrimp, fatty fish, what have you, right? Whatever the person's willing to do. And then one new fruit, one new veggie. That'll give you a good way to kind of think about it that's not super overwhelming. Another way to think about that too is just shop the sales, because sales rotate and things, change in different seasons. But I think that many people struggle because they lack diversity in their diet, and therefore they lack diversity in their microbiome. And so those would be really, I know, foundational things. They're not super sexy. It's not that I came in with an $89 product to sell anybody today, because the reality that I tell people all the time is you don't need major protocols. If you fix the foundations, we can see a lot of symptom improvement. And once we get there, then we say, oh, what else do I need? Because you might need supplements and pharmaceuticals and big protocols. But even in my practice, working with some of the most chronic, complex cases, I can't tell you how many times people will come in, women on 21 supplements. I saw the best doctors. They did all these fancy tests. And I'm like, well, tell me about your diet. Oh, it wasn't like a focus. It wasn't really a discussion. They just said to eat clean. Well, what does eating clean even mean? These days it's so confusing. You search it in Google and you get 8,900,000 different answers, So that is a huge focus in our practice, where we are doing a lot with diet diversity. We're doing a lot of different dietary strategies based upon the person and what they're struggling with. And then, we get into, of course, the supplements and the peptides to help them through this process if we need to eradicate things. Supporting liver and gallbladder is huge. Adrenal function, hormones, thyroid, all of that matters. But all of that will not work if you don't have your foundations in place and if you cannot get a hold of your stress. And so I would just urge you, if you're listening to this today, whenever it is, start with those 3 things and track your progress. Maybe keep a little food and mood journal, symptom tracker, even if it's just for 7 days, that you really commit. It's not going to cost you anything, but it is going to cost you a little bit of that intention and time. And then you can say, okay, I've noticed A, B, and C maybe have improved. It's not perfect. It's going to take time. You're going to have to be consistent, and you're going to have to, continue to be your own health detective and find what works for you if you're doing this on your own. But over time, that consistency will pay off. And I'll leave you with this quote that one of my mentors said, and I just love it so much. He says, consistency looks like nothing until one day it does. And if you let that sink in a minute and think about it, oh man, it's going to
Mm.
require more than 7 days. It's going to require, like, I love those memes where it's like, I started my diet at 6 a.m. Now it's 6 p.m., and I expect to be skinny mini,
Yeah.
and then it's obviously not how it works. So just really stay consistent, really focus on getting into that state of rest and digest, finding joy in your day, and just trying to let a lot of these external stressors that we have in our life, um, put them in a box, set some boundaries, and you're going to find that that is going to help you. And then it gives you more clarity on what the next steps are that you need to do. It's not the end all be all. Stress management and nervous system regulation is not the end all be all. Don't get me wrong. That's not what I'm saying. But I am saying I don't think that people should be spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on things. And I mean, I have worked with clients that have spent 6 figures plus trying to protocol and protocol and protocol and test and all these things. And when we get down into the weeds of the basics, they're not consistent with that. And I
Mhm.
just think that we can't overlook that before we go deeper.
I love that. I love that the top three things are so basic and anybody can do, and that's what we need because we're already bombarded with so much with our chronic illness
Mm-hmm.
that give me something that is not going to cost more money and all of these things to repair or make better something that it can really be devastating. I mean, stomach
Yeah.
issues are the worst, and
Yeah.
so I really appreciate that. Can you talk to us about fitmom.co?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Fit Mom Functional Health is, again, the functional medicine practice that I run. And we have a team of practitioners that all specialize in different things. I'm a little biased, but they're pretty amazing. So you can always book a free consult. You just start with a 15-minute call with my team, kind of learn a little bit about what we do, what our offers are, right? We have several. People can start with a blood work and review and understand what my labs are telling me, because maybe you are like I was, and my labs were normal. No, my labs were not normal. I actually had Hashimoto's found by doing a comprehensive panel and looking at the antibodies. And that was showing me autoimmune activity attacking my thyroid. But thankfully, I caught it in time before it started to really show up in my hormones in terms of the thyroid hormones. So we do the comprehensive blood work and review. That's 1 hour that you're spending with us. And we're talking about your health history, your symptoms. What are your labs compared to how we want to be optimally? And then what are some things that we could do about it, or what are the patterns and trends? Like, why would these be off? Because again, conventional medicine, they're working within the constraints that they have and the tools they have. You might get a My Chart message that says, everything looks good. See you in 6 months, follow up, right? And then
Yeah.
you're wondering, well, did the doctor hear anything I said? Because I told him how I'm feeling so horrible and I'm so exhausted and I cannot poop and I cannot lose weight, but apparently everything's normal. And so remember that they're looking for a disease state. We're looking to be proactive. So that's kind of like our baseline. If you've never worked with a functional provider before, you want to learn how we look at the body as the symphony and all these systems working together. Start there. Otherwise, we have a 3-month program, a 6-month program option. And again, we work with clients around the world. So if you are international, that is okay. We work with those international clients too. But yeah, fitmom.co, and they could just book a call there. And that would be the best way to start. On my Instagram, I'd like to point there because I have a lot of free resources. And actually, fitmom.co under the resource tab has some, resources that you can go through too. But on my Instagram at the Poop Queen, you can go, you can comment constipation, you get my free constipation cure guide. You can comment fiber, get the fiber guide. I have so many things that I've put together in various ways just as giveaways, because I really want people to understand that there are real solutions to the symptoms that you have. You don't have to live this way in terms of feeling crummy every day. There's so many answers that we can find and so many things that we can do.
Yeah. It's so important because I know a lot of chronic illness spoonies can feel so discouraged,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to stomach issues and feeling like they're not getting any better and kind of feeling a little bit stuck. So, gosh, I can't tell you how much I appreciate all of the tips and tricks. And we're going to link fitmom.co and in the description so that people can go right to the website and book that free session. And I know that it's a topic that a lot of people are afraid to ask questions, and and so I love the resources that you give because they are simple and it's not a quick fix, and it's not, like you said, a $70 bottle of miracle cure that is going to fix everything. But I know the information is really important, and more information is coming out about the gut health and all of that. And so I think that it's just such good information for somebody who might feel discouraged and not getting the answers.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if we look at the development over the last 20 years, it's really amazing to see the research and what we know today compared to what we knew in the early 2000s. I mean, my mom was kind of dabbling in functional medicine as I was going through some of the rheumatoid arthritis stuff. And it was all very, what way they would say, quack medicine, or, just weird woo-woo, voodoo, whatever they would call it. And thankfully today we have so much that's continued to come out, and so much that we can utilize now to understand why these things happen, in terms of like IBS. This is a syndrome. Okay, well, we need to look at underlying infections driving inflammation, right? We need to look at the bacteria, the species in the microbiome. What are we missing? What's overgrown? Again, that's going to be more on the infectious side, but then we have to look at stress and stressors. And so that could be everything from external to, what we're using in our home, on our skin, our hair, our makeup products, our air quality, all that. But then also thinking about stressors that could be traumas, big T, little t, we kind of call them, like really big things or small things that have just, we've swept under the rug. Maybe we don't like to address emotions. I know a lot of people like to just hold it in. And I always say with a beach ball, you can only hold it underwater for so long. It's going to erupt at some point. And so whether or not that person chooses to address that, right, with the proper provider, we have to recognize that it does play a role. And so there's a really good book I'll give to a lot of people that's called The Body Keeps Score. Now, it's not the most fun read, but it really does help people start to realize, okay, I've got to start to unravel some of this. And that can go all the way back to childhood. It can be generational trauma, right? And so really that functional approach is holistic. It's looking at everything. And it's not just looking at my rant today on my social media was about these functional medicine, or just these people who get access to tests and, okay, I can run these tests and I could sell these tests. I can make money off these tests. So I'll offer it, And the story I was sharing is a girl that I'm working with. She had seen some of the best doctors, GI doctors, the top in the nation. She's a nurse herself, and they wanted to remove her large colon. She is now going through a program that I went through to learn, the functional way. And we had our call yesterday, and she said, I was looking back and I couldn't even believe that practitioner. I mean, this is glaring. I had pancreatic insufficiency 6 years ago. Her conventional medicine doctors missed it. Whoever this person was that ran the test for her missed it. And it's just a glaring, like, this is a no-brainer. And so she's like, gosh, I just wonder where I would be. She's seen a lot of progress in the last 4 to 5 months compared to the last 6 years. So that's great, because we've got her on a really good path. But imagine where she could be if that was caught 6 years ago. And I'm going to do a really in-depth training on pancreatic insufficiency, because it does impact a lot, within the body. So it's just little things like that we just have to keep advocating for ourselves. Follow your gut instincts. If your doctor doesn't listen to you, find a new doctor. If you have the means to invest in the functional route, because sadly it is out of pocket unless it's like an HSA or FSA, then find someone that you trust. Find someone that's knowledgeable. Find someone that has the proof. Right? Like I tell everybody, if it's not my team, just make sure you vet the person that you're going to work with that has proof, that has, people like my chronic illness cases that I work with. Many of them I'll have talked to other clients that I've worked with, just because they feel in that place of, I've lost hope. And we have to regain that, because we have to have the self-belief the mindset of healing has to be part of the protocol, not just the supplements, right? And the diet and the testing and things like that. So it's all under one umbrella, very holistic.
I feel like we just scratched the surface, but that's where our listeners need to get to your page and follow you on Instagram and research a little bit more and book that call. So I can't tell you how appreciative I am that you took time out to help our Spoonie listeners and give us all this great information. And I can't wait to book my call as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me on. I look forward to sharing it when it airs.
I want to thank Liz for being here and for being a part of this important conversation. I think this episode is such an important reminder that if you've been feeling like your symptoms don't make sense, or you're trying everything and you're not getting any better, you're not alone in that. And more importantly, it's not all in your head. Gut health can be a piece of the puzzle, but it's not about blame. It's not about doing everything perfect, but understanding your body a little bit better and taking things one step at a time. If this episode resonated with you, feel free to share it with someone who might need it too. And if you haven't already, make sure you're following the show so you don't miss future episodes. We have just 2 more episodes till the end of this season, and the episodes coming up are just as wonderful. And I'm so excited for you to listen to them. As always, thank you for saving some spoons to be with me today. Until next time, take care. Thank you for listening to The Spoonful Show. Follow the podcast so you never miss an episode. Leave a rating, review, and comment. Connect with me on Instagram at Spoonful of Strength and TikTok at spoonful.of.strength. Remember, that's spoonful with 2 L's. Shop customized t-shirts, sweatshirts, hoodies, mugs, and more on our Etsy shop at spoonfulofstrength.etsy.com and use code podcast for 20% off your entire cart.